Thanks, Gregor. Hey, Paul. You without Blake, Montreal without Brendan Gallagher, both described as heart and soul players. So, what does that game look like? And is it a matter of which team adjusts best without their leaders?
Yeah, you've got important pieces out of your lineup, and it's style-wise, right? Those guys that play hard every shift, every night, really help your consistency as a team. And then it's a little bit of a test of leadership. So all great leaders do certainly set a standard for the people around them, but they also build other leaders. So we've got other men now that have to fill Blake's role and show the way on the ice, but also make sure we monitor our emotions and we stay up when things aren't going our way and don't get too carried away with ourselves when it is going. So we will have other people step and have an opportunity to lead now.
We'll go next to Marc-Antoine Godin from The Athletic. Go ahead, Mark.
Yes, thank you. I might ask you to answer this question more from a management standpoint. You guys signed Trevor Lewis and Uncle Nate right before the season. The Leafs got Wayne Simmons. Montreal signed Corey Perry. Those guys are different players, but they're each veterans who've hold on to an NHL spot by signing league minimum contract. Do you think that with the cap situation being what it is around the league, and even if we've been saying that the league keeps getting younger, there is a new opportunity for veterans to really extend their careers as long as they're willing to take on affordable contracts?
Oh, for sure, because there's also a benefit of having your younger players not play on, and we'll talk about fourth lines, because in our situation, we've got two of these guys playing those fourth line roles. Corey Perry's moved up, Joe Thornton's moved up. I understand, Wayne Simmons is on that fourth line, but you players like Mike Frolik, for instance, good veteran players that maybe get to a point where you would say, because of my Kyle Connors and those players of the world taking up so much of our salary cap, we can't afford veteran players at maybe the $2 million mark anymore. And then you would, it's not justifying, but you say, I'll put a younger player in there at the 750 and we'll develop them there. But if you can get a veteran player, and you will find then, and I mean, certainly Eric Stahl's not playing on the fourth line, but when you have great character veteran guys, Eric Stahl, Nate Thompson, for sure, Trevor Lewis, right? These kind of guys, then you want them around, especially, like Montreal and certainly Winnipeg. Some of our star players, if you will, or our high producers are still young men. You have this added benefit. You get great character. These guys, they know, like Nate and Trevor came to our team on a PTO. They know what their role is, what they're going to be asked to do. They're great, consistent pros. And the other kind of wonderful thing that I think happens is some of these younger players that play, 15 to 20 minutes a night view fourth line players differently. They view them with far more respect if it's a Nate Thompson than it is, let's say, a kid that could be playing for the Moose and he's playing for us. There's a whole bunch of reasons why I think what you said is true. I think with COVID and the cap and all these things that we're going through, if you could have a year next year, if it's a flat cap again, where all our American League teams are still playing, you might be able to leave some of these guys down there where they can play 20 minutes a night instead of taking those roles where you can have older players who've developed their game. You almost don't have to coach them anymore. There's lots of benefits to it.
We'll go next to Richard Labbé from La Presse. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, I want to ask you about Pierre-Luc Dubois, and what were your expectations of him when you went out and acquired him, and in your mind, has he met those expectations as of today?
So he's met them for sure. This is not a point issue for us. I mean, he scored a bunch. He had a tough start coming to us with the quarantine and his injury. I think what surprised me the most is the other things that I think he can grow into. So he's a skill player. He can make plays. He can score goals. He'll produce points. But he does have an innate defensive mindset. So he's good in his own end. He's physical in his own end. He doesn't cheat the game for offense. And that's a really important characteristic for a guy that you see eventually will play against the other team's, best offensive player. He'll be able to defend them and also produce points. So he's at least as good as I thought he was. And then after you spend time, you start to say, this guy's going to grow into be a dominant forward in the NHL. I don't know that he's going to score 50 goals. I don't care whether he does or not, but I think he's going to shut down the other team's best. I think he'll outscore the other team's best on the nights we play him against them.
We'll go next to Scott Billick from the Winnipeg Sun. Go ahead, Scott.
Thanks, Gregor, and good morning, Paul. Your fourth line had been able, up to Blake getting injured, kind of even out the minutes up top. What is the ripple effect there now with Wheeler out and Jansen coming into the fourth line? Does that change how you deploy everybody else?
No, I don't think so. So if you go right back to training camp, that was the first line that we put Harkins with Thompson and Lewis and liked it an awful lot. There's also a big block of games where Perreault on his left with Lowry and Appleton was our shutdown line in a lot of ways, and it was really, really effective. So those are the two obvious positions that gets changed. I'm not asking Andrew Copp to play Blake Wheeler's game, but Andrew will add some good defensive acumen on that line. You may see me play around with those lines on the first, on these 5 games, because it's an opportunity to do that. That won't change anything that's working, obviously, but if there might be some tinkering that. So I don't think it actually changes the bottom 2 quite as much based on the history that we have here this year. I expect Hart to be able to go in and play with those 2 guys and not change their game one bit.
We'll go next to Ken Weaver from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Weaver. Weaver is MIA. We'll go next to Murat Atesh from The Athletic. Go ahead, Murat.
Paul, I'm just following up on Marc-Antoine's question there. I love the question. I love the answer. You mentioned in this idea that young people will look up to veterans in that fourth line role. And I'm wondering, because you guys have gone to that well, Matt Hendricks, Mark Letestu, Nate Thompson, what is it about somebody who's been around that can carry that space that somebody's going to look up to them in that way, even above these really highly skilled but inexperienced guys in fourth line jobs?
Some of it's just straight effectiveness. So if you get a really young player that's not there yet, right? He's not ready to play. And our team's structured a certain way, so that means if you're a skilled guy, you got to get into our top 6 to kind of play on that field. It's a difficult place. So we go back, 2 years ago with 3 very young, almost 4 very young players, all on the fourth line, all of them wanting more ice time. But their game wasn't developed enough for them to get it and give us a chance to win. So what those guys do is very specific, right? You look at the 2, Thompson and Perreault as well in that, but he's a more of an offensive-minded guy. They have a great understanding or respect on that role. So Trevor Lewis is Stanley Cup champion. And they do it every single night. And they know that if they do that effectively, they can stay in the league for another year, give them another chance to win a cup. There's a lot of great things that can happen by those guys playing 8 to 10 minutes a night, and they can be a big part of our team winning. And the players on the bench see that, right? So they get this kind of respect for the love of the game, being great pros, right? Like, I'm not having to ever pull Nate Thompson or Trevor Lewis aside and say, listen, man, you need to get to the meetings on time, or you need to practice harder, or you need to be more wired on the bench, or I know you're a skilled guy and you want to show me how skilled you are, but the backhand spinorama at the offensive blue line at the end of the shift is never a good idea. Those conversations never have to happen with those guys. It's easier on the coaching staff for sure, right? The young players, certainly we just went through a stretch of being an exceptionally young team, especially up front. And now those guys are transitioning out. And there may come a point in time where you can put a young player or 2 on your fourth line, because those older veteran guys now will direct them, right? With where we're at right now, the value of having that veteran fourth line, especially in this season, this condensed season, being able to play 4 lines has been, I think, just critical for us being able to survive. So you look at the month that Montreal is going to face here with their schedule, and they won't like it. But we had that plus 3 more weeks tacked on if the Vancouver situation hadn't transpired. So having veteran players was just absolutely critical for us this year.
Just a couple more for Coach. We'll go next to Jason Bell from the Free Press. Go ahead, Jason.
Well, such a different year for a guy like Jansen Harkins, who would be doing this thing with the Moose possibly. I think how does a guy like that, what do you say about a guy like that who's been able to maybe keep the engagement level up, or how does he keep the engagement level up during?
Yeah, so you're right. You're right. Like, it's a real challenge for those guys. We've been incredibly healthy, so they don't even get a game every 4 games, which would be in the normal, right, in a normal environment. So we got incredibly healthy here this year. So we've had good players kind of sitting out for a long period of time, and I've found, and I'm not going to take you. There's a bunch of them that have just handled it great. Like, hard every day, understanding that they might get a 40-minute practice, a 20-minute practice. They get a lot of off-ice conditioning that goes with it. It's been easier, probably, I would say, for Hark and maybe Sammy, Niku, and now Villy, because we've used them in our main practice group. We just haven't practiced very much. So it's been a challenge. He's worked really hard. That's never an issue with him. And I think there's also been a great area for improvement for a lot of these guys, because in a normal main practice, players don't touch the puck as much as you might think. They touch it more than a game, but these guys have been out and handling pucks nonstop, right? So every day they're getting 3-4 times as many shots on goal as they normally would, 2, 3, 4 times as many cutbacks, tight turns, battles one-on-one. So there's a chance here that these guys have actually gotten better in this, where that's what we're hoping for. The last thing I would say about Jansen, when he came back up last year, he came back up systematically really strong. So Pascal Vincent and his staff have done a great job from the Moose, the guys that come up. Their positioning is very good on the ice. So we don't have to spend a lot of time on the video doing that. It's just about energy now. And so we want to see him on the puck, finishing checks. And if he gets a chance to get that shot off, we want him shooting the puck every chance he gets.
And final question to Kelly Moore from CJOB. Go ahead, Kelly.
Thank you, Gregor. Paul, you've got 5 road games coming up over the next 8 nights. So this one's aimed at Andrew Copp specifically. But I remember back in late January, early February, you had mentioned when he was playing 23, 24 minutes is probably too much for Andrew. With the line that he's on, I'm guessing it'll be an extra 4 or 5 shifts, maybe 2 or 3 minutes of playing time. If you had to sacrifice and take him off one of the special teams and maybe give more ice to somebody else, has that entered into the thought process at all with these 5 road games coming up?
No, I think he's not going to get to that, a low 20-minute number on that line. 5 and 8 is a stiff schedule, but it's nothing compared to what we just came through. So I'm more worried about those guys that got into the 20s when we played, when we played 20 games in 36 days. And even that isn't the challenge. 12 of them are on the road. We changed time zone 6 times. That's where the wear and tear started to come in. So I think with the way we've got it structured now, he's going to end up somewhere between that 16 to 18 minute. If he had to get pulled off one, I'd take him off the power play because he's really been good for us on the penalty kill. But with Scheif's line and Lauz's line kind of in some ways intact, I know how many minutes they're going to get. The Dubois line won't be running over 20 tonight.